I'm here in Cape Horn, Chile, the southernmost part of South America and a place regarded by sailors as the most iconic and feared landmark in the world.
Cape Horn claimed over 800 ships and 10,000 sailors who tried to cross its treacherous waters, making it the largest ship graveyard in the world. Imagine waves the size of buildings, winds that scream like ghosts, and captains praying just to see daylight again. From the doomed voyage of the Susanna to the legendary triumph of Great Britain too, Cape Horn isn't just history, it's humanity versus nature at its fiercest. But the biggest question of all is, what could be in the waters? Some sailors have shockingly seen it. Stick around, because the revelation will blow your mind. Why Cape Horn was the ultimate test for sailors. Cape Horn, located at the southernmost tip of South America, has long been spoken of as one of the most dangerous places a sailor could ever face. People often said it wasn't just a point on a map, but a true test of human courage and survival. At 56 degrees south latitude, where icy winds whip across endless waters, Cape Horn stood like nature's ultimate challenge. Sailors who dared to go near it knew they were stepping into a fight against forces much greater than themselves. Many wondered, why risk it at all? Why would anyone willingly sail through a place known to destroy ships and swallow men whole? Yet for some, the danger itself was the call, the thrill of conquering what others feared most. The geography of Cape Horn made it an unforgiving battlefield. Unlike the northern parts of the world, where massive continents like North America and Eurasia help break the wind, the southern hemisphere below 40 degrees south has almost no land to stop the gusts. The winds there, called the westerlies, were free to circle the globe without interruption, gathering strength and fury as they went. And then, as if that weren't enough, the towering Andes Mountains on one side and the icy Antarctic Peninsula on the other funneled those powerful winds into the narrow Drake Passage. The result was something close to chaos, a roaring, howling wind tunnel that didn't just test a ship's strength, but a sailor's sanity. Waves crashed like mountains, and the air itself seemed alive, tearing through sails and snapping ropes like thread. It wasn't just a storm. It was nature's fury unleashed, and every captain who dared to face it knew one wrong move could mean vanishing without a trace. But even in those brutal conditions, some sailors still tried to cross Cape Horn. What they saw midway didn't just shake them, it terrified them. Stay with me till the end. As sailors journeyed southward, they began to notice the world itself seemed to change. The air grew colder, the skies darker, and the winds more violent. They entered what old mariners grimly called the Roaring Forties, Furious Fifties, and Screaming Sixties. These weren't just poetic names, they were warnings passed down through generations. Cape Horn sat right in the heart of the Furious Fifties, where wind speeds could easily reach 22 miles per hour, and gusts sometimes exceeded 56 miles per hour. One could almost imagine the ocean itself shouting in anger, daring anyone to cross. Sailors who managed to survive these regions often described the experience in vivid detail. One of them, Richard Henry Dana Jr., once recalled how he saw a large black cloud rolling on from the southwest, blackening the whole heavens. His mate had shouted, "Here comes Cape Horn!" And before they could even prepare, the storm was upon them. Those who read his account could almost feel the cold spray and hear the shrieking winds. But what truly made Cape Horn so terrifying wasn't just the wind, it was what the wind did to the sea. The waves in those latitudes had nothing to stop them from growing, and so they did, swelling higher and higher as they circled the globe. By the time they reached Cape Horn, they met shallower waters that made them shorter, steeper, and infinitely deadlier. Imagine a wall of water rising out of nowhere, slamming into a ship already fighting to stay upright. Could even the strongest vessel withstand that? Many could not. And those who did often emerged battered and shaken, their crews haunted by what they had seen. Then there was the weather, as unpredictable as it was brutal. One moment, the sky could be clear and deceptively calm. The next, the world would seem to fall apart. Sailors spoke in fear of the will-o-was, sudden, violent gusts of wind that struck without warning, flipping sails and capsizing ships before anyone could react. On top of that came freezing rain that clung to ropes and decks, turning everything into slippery, heavy ice. Some ships were said to have frozen solid mid-journey, their rigging encased in ice so thick it could barely be chipped away. And if that wasn't enough, there were rogue waves, giant, unpredictable walls of water that could rise 30 meters high and crush a ship in an instant. The dangers didn't stop there. Icebergs drifted north even in summer, lurking unseen in the mist, while colliding ocean currents created swirling turbulence beneath the surface. There were times when the sea seemed to move in every direction at once, confusing even the most skilled sailors. And during the worst storms, winds could roar past 100 miles per hour, hurricane strength, tearing sails to shreds and splintering masts like toothpicks. Some said the sea at Cape Horn wasn't just alive, it was angry. It wasn't surprising that sailors came up with dark sayings about the place. One of the most famous went, "Below 40 degrees latitude, there is no law. Below 50 degrees, there is no God." It captured the hopelessness they felt, the sense that once they crossed a certain point, they were on their own. Between 1870 and 1914, more than 800 ships were wrecked in those waters, and about 10,000 lives were lost. 10,000. Can anyone truly imagine what that means? 10,000 people swallowed by the sea.
And where icebergs drift up from Antarctica like floating traps. More than 800 ships are believed to have sunk here. Tens of thousands of sailors were swallowed by these waters.
Their names now forgotten, except by the wind that still howls around the Horn. Before we get to the part where everything turned upside down, let's pause for a second because this is where the story takes a dark, breathtaking twist. For centuries, Cape Horn wasn't just another point on a map. It was where legends were born and lost. Every sailor who dared to cross it faced roaring winds, walls of water, and silence that could break a man's mind. But what happened midway through one particular crossing changed everything. Stay glued, because what you're about to hear next isn't just a turning point, it's the moment destiny itself shifted course. The moment everything changed midway. For sailors who dared to venture into the wild and unpredictable waters around Cape Horn, the journey often began with a sense of cautious optimism. The sea might appear calm at first, the wind gentle enough to raise a fragile kind of hope. Many believed that if they could just keep steady, they might make it through. But little did they know that these deceptively manageable conditions were nothing more than nature's cruel trick. Because what lay ahead wasn't simply rough weather or strong waves, it was something far worse. It was the kind of raw, unrestrained fury that could turn the bravest of sailors into trembling men praying for mercy. Was it courage or foolishness that pushed them to sail on, knowing the legends that surrounded this place? Perhaps it was a bit of both. In those early moments, the sea seemed almost welcoming. The skies looked uncertain, but not threatening, and the crew moved about with a false sense of confidence, chatting, laughing even, unaware of how quickly everything could turn. But then, without warning, the mood of the ocean would shift. Richard Henry Dana Jr., who witnessed it firsthand in the 1830s, wrote about the terrifying transformation in his diary. He described how he rushed up to the deck and saw a massive black cloud rolling toward them from the southwest, swallowing the entire sky. "Here comes Cape Horn," the chief mate shouted, and before they could even react, the storm was upon them. Can you imagine that? 1 minute steady winds, the next a roaring chaos that could rip a ship apart. The change happened within minutes. The atmosphere would thicken, the air turned cold, and the once steady sea began to snarl. The dreaded willy-waw winds, violent, invisible bursts that could exceed 100 miles per hour, would come out of nowhere, slamming into ships with unimaginable force. These winds didn't just threaten sails or ropes. They could snap masts, tear through the rigging, and fling men overboard like they were nothing but loose pieces of wood. How does one prepare for something like that? You simply can't. Nature always had the upper hand here, and the sailors knew it. There were signs, of course, that a storm was coming. Dark clouds would roll swiftly from the southwest. The barometric pressure would plummet. Hail and sleet began to fall more frequently, and temperatures dropped suddenly, biting into exposed skin. These were warnings that danger was closing in. But even when they recognized the signs, there was rarely enough time to act. The storm would strike fast, and all anyone could do was hold on and hope. Yet, even these storms paled in comparison to the most feared enemy of all: rogue waves. Those who sailed near Cape Horn often said that nothing could prepare a person for the sight of one. Imagine standing on deck, already exhausted and drenched, when a monstrous wall of water, sometimes 30 meters high, rises before you like a moving mountain. It didn't come with a pattern or rhythm. It just appeared, sudden and merciless, swallowing ships in seconds and leaving no trace behind. How do you fight something that comes out of nowhere? You don't. You just pray that it misses you. The danger grew worse as ships neared the shallow waters around the Horn. The deep ocean swells collided with the continental shelf, forcing the waves to grow shorter, steeper, and far more violent. 1 second, sailors would be riding high on a rolling wave, and the next, they'd find themselves staring straight into a vertical wall of water crashing down on them. The sound of it alone could make a man's heart stop. When multiple weather systems collided, it became chaos in its purest form. Black waves thundering against the bow and sides at once. Some modern sailors compared it to being trapped in a boxing ring with an invisible, stronger opponent, one that never tired and never showed mercy. And indeed, there was no referee in this fight, only survival. As if the raging seas weren't enough, another kind of terror often followed: the failure of navigation instruments. At a time when a compass was a sailor's lifeline, losing it meant losing all sense of direction. The fierce magnetic variations near the southern latitudes played tricks on the compass needle, causing it to spin wildly or point nowhere at all. Sometimes, the metal stored too close to the compass interfered. Other times, it was the storm's own electrical charge disrupting everything. Whatever the cause, the result was the same: panic. With no way to tell which way they were heading, ships drifted helplessly, often steering straight toward the jagged cliffs and rocky shores that had already claimed countless lives. How many must have stared into that endless Black Sea, wondering if they'd be next? Between 1870 and 1914 alone, more than 800 ships met their end in these unforgiving waters. Around 10,000 souls were lost.
Sailors called it the Everest of the seas, a cape so feared that countless never returned, Cape Horn. For centuries, this isolated rock meant survival or disaster.
Their names now swallowed by the same waves that took them. That stretch between Cape Horn and Antarctica, the Drake Passage, earned its title as the most treacherous ocean on Earth. To sail there was to gamble with fate itself. Even experienced captains, men who had spent decades mastering the sea, admitted that nothing compared to the terror of facing Cape Horn. And yet, there was something deeply human about their persistence. Despite the fear, despite the countless shipwrecks, men kept sailing there. Was it pride, duty, a longing for discovery, or the sheer stubbornness of the human spirit that refuses to surrender to the sea? Maybe it was all of these, and more, because Cape Horn wasn't just a place on the map. It was a brutal test of everything that made sailors human: their courage, their fear, their faith. And for many, it became their final chapter. But what truly makes this corner of the world unforgettable are the stories that refuse to sink with them. Stay glued till the very end, because these shipwrecks still whisper through history. Shipwrecks that still haunt maritime history. Throughout maritime history, some shipwrecks around Cape Horn have remained deeply etched in people's memories, their mysterious fates standing as chilling reminders of just how merciless those waters can be. The stories of these vanished vessels, whispered across generations, seem to live on like restless ghosts of the sea. Sailors who have braved those waters still speak of them with awe and fear, as though the ocean itself remembers. One might wonder, what truly happened to those ships? Were they swallowed by storms, struck by ice, or simply pulled into the deep by forces beyond understanding? The story of the Dunedin is perhaps one of the most haunting of them all. It was one of New Zealand's first refrigerated cargo ships, a true marvel of its time. Built in 1874, the ship was initially meant to carry immigrants, but she later made history when she pioneered the frozen meat trade between New Zealand and England. Everything about her story began so normally. On March 19, 1890, Captain Roberts set sail from Oamaru with his 34 crew members and his daughter, the only passenger on board. It was supposed to be a simple 90-day voyage, one they had made before without incident. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the silence grew unbearable. By July, people began to worry. By October, the authorities had no choice but to declare her missing. How could a ship that large, carrying so many lives, simply vanish without a trace? Soon after, rumors began to spread. One story claimed that the Dunedin had been spotted near Cape Horn by another ship, the London, before they were separated by a fierce storm. Another more sensational rumor suggested she had been found off the coast of Brazil, her crew wiped out by yellow fever. But that report was quickly dismissed as false. Experts eventually came to believe a simpler yet equally tragic theory: that the Dunedin likely struck one of the many icebergs reported in that area during the same season by the RMS Rimutaka. It was an ending as cold and silent as the sea itself, an ending that left families waiting, and an entire country wondering what really happened out there. Then came the tale of the Admiral Karpfanger, a ship whose story feels almost cursed by irony. Once known as L'Avenir, this German four-masted bark was renamed in honor of a seaman who himself had died when his ship sank in 1683. Almost as if destiny had a dark sense of humor, the same fate awaited her. After being bought and refitted by the Hamburg America Line in 1937, she was transformed into a training ship and set out on her maiden voyage under her new name. On February 8, 1938, she left Port Germain, Australia, carrying 33 cadets, many of them just boys between 14 and 17 years old, along with 27 crew members and 3,500 tons of wheat. Though her radio generator wasn't working properly, She still managed to stay in contact until March 12th, when all communication abruptly stopped. Her last known position placed her near, of course, Cape Horn. And then, nothing. For months, there was only silence. Families clung to hope, imagining perhaps that the ship had been blown off course or stranded somewhere remote. But hope turned to grief when searchers began finding scattered remains, bits of a door, fragments of the nameplate, and pieces of wood with Belgian Navy rope clinging to them, floating near Navarino Island in Chile. Those few pieces were all that was ever recovered of the Admiral Karpfanger and her 60 souls. People couldn't help but ask, was it the wind, the waves, or something far darker that claimed them? Whatever the answer, it became another story that would echo through generations of sailors as a warning. What it was like to be on board. Life aboard ships that sailed around Cape Horn was not for the faint of heart. It was said that those who made it through were never quite the same again. The endless cold, the screaming winds, the unpredictable seas. It all combined into something few people today could even begin to imagine. Sailors had to endure not just physical exhaustion, but a kind of psychological warfare against nature itself.
There's nothing like Cape Horn. Just what it represents. It's striking physically, really. It's the Mount Everest for sailors. I mean, I think fewer people have rounded Cape Horn than have summited Mount Everest, which is pretty ridiculous.
They were constantly pushed to the edge, facing moments that tested what it truly meant to survive. One could only wonder, how did they keep going when every instinct screamed at them to give up? How did they find the will to keep working when the sea itself seemed determined to claim them? Below deck, things were hardly any better. The sailors often said that stepping below deck felt like entering a wet grave. The cold was bone deep, the kind that crawled into their very bones and never let go. Water temperatures dropped to just a few degrees above freezing, and everything on board seemed soaked through. Clothes, blankets, even the air itself. One sailor had once described it vividly. Their pillow was wet, their sleeping bag was wet, their clothes were wet, and under such conditions, misery became almost normal. The condensation from their own breath mixed with the sea spray, dripping from the ceiling non-stop. Imagine trying to sleep in that. How could anyone rest when even closing your eyes meant lying in icy dampness? Sickness spread quickly, and many were left shivering in their bunks with broken bones, scurvy, or fevers, unable to do anything but listen to the ship groan and the waves slam against the hull. Then there was the horror of climbing into the rigging during storms, which was said to be the truest test of courage. When the sea turned wild and the wind howled like a living creature, the men still had to go up, clinging to ropes that had turned slick with freezing salt spray. One wrong step could mean falling straight into the merciless water below. Some said the wind during those storms made such a noise that it sounded like the sky itself was tearing apart. The men called it the fourth reef, the last desperate effort to keep control of the sails when all else failed. The ropes would snap without warning, and masts could shatter under the strain. Even the most exhausted men had to push themselves beyond reason, climbing higher and higher, while their hands burned from the cold. Can you imagine gripping icy ropes while hurricane winds screamed around you, knowing one slip could be your last? It wasn't bravery, many said, it was survival, plain and simple. But perhaps nothing haunted sailors more than watching their crewmates vanish into the sea. It happened far too often, and always without warning. A single rogue wave could sweep a man overboard, and in seconds he was gone, swallowed by the roaring darkness. In one tragic account from 2021, 2 men aboard the tanker Arafura died after a massive wave hit while they checked an alarm near the bow. Another heartbreaking story told of a young sailor named Edwin Paul Simpson, just 18 years old. who was thrown overboard when the ship lurched violently. His father had been on deck, watching helplessly as his son was carried away by the waves. There was no way to rescue him. The sea was too angry, too strong. How does a person ever recover from witnessing something like that? How do you keep working when your friend, your son, or your brother is simply gone, taken right before your eyes? For many sailors, those moments never left them. The nightmares came back again and again, long after the storms were over. And even when the seas calmed, the storms inside their minds never truly did. The psychological toll of life around Cape Horn was something that few outsiders could ever understand. Many sailors went days without sleep, their nerves frayed until they began hearing things that weren't there. One sailor once confessed to hearing voices outside his boat, ghostly murmurs that made him question whether he was awake or dreaming. Others learned to shut off their emotions completely. They called it survival mode. They didn't let themselves feel joy, fear, or sadness, just a blank calm that helped them focus on the next task. After all, what use were emotions when every day could be your last? One man said he made a conscious choice to turn down his feelings, because if he didn't, the fear would eat him alive. Some never managed to turn it back off. Captain Harriman was one such man. After a brutal voyage around the Horn, he became obsessed with the ship he had lost to the sea. Those who knew him said he spent the rest of his life trying to find his way back, as if saving that ship could somehow wash away everything he'd lost. He died years later in an asylum, haunted by memories that clung to him like salt on skin, the kind that never fades. Maybe that's what the sea really does to a man. It doesn't just test him, it brands him. It takes a piece of his soul and never returns it. And that's why Cape Horn became more than a place. It became a warning. Stay with me till the end. Cape Horn's enduring symbolism. Beyond all the fear, tragedy, and countless stories of loss at sea, there lies something strangely beautiful about Cape Horn's transformation. A shift from being the sailor's worst nightmare to becoming one of the most respected maritime achievements in history. Once upon a time, sailors would tremble at the very mention of this place, their minds filled with visions of monstrous waves and roaring winds that could tear a ship apart in moments. Yet, over the years, something changed. What used to be a passage of pure terror slowly evolved into a symbol of courage and mastery. It became the ultimate test of a sailor's skill and heart. After all, isn't it human nature to want to conquer the very thing that frightens us the most? Among the many traditions that sprang from this daring feat, one stands out more than any other: the gold earring. It might seem like a small thing, just a bit of jewelry, but to sailors, it carried deep meaning. Those who survived the voyage around Cape Horn earned the right to wear a gold earring in their left ear. It wasn't merely a decoration, it was a mark of pride. A quiet yet powerful statement that said, "I faced the wildest waters on Earth, and I lived to tell the tale." In a way, it was their version of a Medal of Honor. Interestingly, the earring wasn't just symbolic. It had a practical use too. If a sailor's body ever washed ashore, the gold could pay for a proper Christian burial. There's something haunting yet oddly poetic about that, isn't there? The idea that even in death, the sea's warriors carried their own final offering. Today, times have changed, but the legend of Cape Horn hasn't faded. Modern sailors, whether professionals or adventurers at heart, still see it as the ultimate badge of honor. The world might be filled with high-tech ships, GPS systems, and weather forecasts that make navigation far safer than it once was, but Cape Horn remains as unpredictable and fierce as ever. To round it successfully is to become part of an elite group, a kind of secret brotherhood of the sea. Many modern sailing races purposely include Cape Horn in their routes, daring participants to face the old beast head-on. And why not? Every sailor knows that to cross it is to earn respect, not just from others, but from the sea itself. It separates the ordinary from the legendary. Isn't it fascinating that even in an era of comfort and convenience, people still crave a challenge that could cost them everything? But what is it that keeps drawing people to this dangerous place? What makes Cape Horn continue to call out to adventurers from around the world? Perhaps it's because true challenges have become so rare. Technology has tamed so many parts of life that there are few places left where raw nature still rules without mercy. Cape Horn is one of those few. Its winds still howl like wild beasts, its waves still rise higher than houses, and its waters still remind humanity of how small we really are. For modern adventurers, there's a thrill in facing the same danger that terrified their ancestors centuries ago. It's more than a journey, it's a communion with history. By battling those same waves, they feel connected to the countless souls who came before them, men who faced the unknown with nothing but their courage and their sails. There's also something deeply personal about the journey. To conquer Cape Horn isn't just about steering a ship through violent storms, it's about facing your own limits. It's about that inner voice that whispers, "Can I really do this?" And finding out the answer for yourself. Many who've rounded the Horn say it changes you. Maybe it's because it forces you to respect the power of nature, to understand that skill alone isn't enough. You also need humility. And isn't that what makes any true adventure worth remembering? The realization that even when we push our boundaries, we're still at the mercy of forces greater than ourselves. So while modern ships may be stronger and sailors more prepared, the essence of Cape Horn hasn't softened. It still stands as a symbol of defiance, courage, and endurance. It's a place where stories are written not on paper, but in the memory of waves and wind. For some, rounding it means joining a legacy. For others, it's about proving something deeply personal. Either way, the allure remains. After all, who wouldn't want to be part of a tradition that has turned fear into triumph? Cape Horn isn't just a destination, it's a timeless test of human spirit. With this, we have come to the end of this video. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do well to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. To enjoy more thrilling stories, click now on the following video that pops up on your screen.